So let's talk about the systematic approach that you're using with districts here in Riverside County.
Okay, well, it's a very popular one, and we're really excited about it because we have very positive data with regards to student outcomes. So the systematic approach that we look at is looking at any standard, whether it's a current standard that we're working on or one that is the new Common Core, and everything in your instruction should be in support of the students mastering that standard. We encourage teachers to really question if they should be doing something that's not directly connected to that standard, because time as teachers is one of our greatest enemies. If we're giving up time on something that's not working on the standard, then we need to really wonder and ask ourselves, is that the best use of our time? Then we have them develop and write a content objective and a language objective. In this system, the content objective identifies for the students what it is they're going to be learning. And so we often encourage the teachers to write that. Not the students will, or the students will be able to, or any of the acronyms, the TWISBAT or the TWISL that they use for that. Because students often, especially our long-term English learners, they'll other that. Well, those students might, but I won't. And they take themselves out of it and nothing changes because it's still the students. We encourage them to create more of a sense of a learning community in their classroom. And instead of saying the students, say we will, to make it show the group responsibility. They are to cooperate together and do a lot of student-to-student interaction to be able to support their learning. The language objective is nothing more than how the students are going to show the teacher that they've learned what the teachers asked them to learn in that content objective. So the content objective is the what they're going to learn, and the language objective is how they're going to show that they've learned it. And the kids, because we need to be able to measure whether they've learned it, whether we do it formally or informally, formatively or as a summative measurement, they need to do it either orally or in writing, or both, for us to be able to see that, because those are the two productive language domains. In other words, if they just listen or they just read, if they don't talk about it or write about it or act it out in some way, we don't know whether they learned it or not. So this will be drawn directly from the standard and will guide the instruction. Throughout the instruction on that standard, there may be multiple days of content and language objectives that change, but throughout that time, there's going to be graphic organizers used, academic language taught explicitly and supported, and sentence frames. And all of it is going to be held together by what we call Structured Academic Language Practice, or SALP for short. So let me talk with you a little bit about Structured Academic Language Practice, because that's really the linchpin for it. What it is it takes our typical pair share, or sometimes think pair share, which we very rarely give kids time to think, we just let them jump right in, and we really structure it and make it very rigorous. Because often we tell the teachers the most overused and yet underutilized strategy in the classroom is the pair share. In other words, you should never give up time in the classroom that, unless you believe that the kids are going to gain more out of that time when you're not teaching them directly, or else don't give it up. In other words, they need to get more out of that pair share time than they would if you kept teaching. This is a way to ensure that. So it's talking about having explicit expectations for the kids in it, in their interaction, making sure that you're requiring them to use transition words and academic language so that they have opportunities to practice that. The scaffolded responses are related to the sentence frame so that they have a way to be able to respond if they're not sure how to begin to talk about it. Including the academic language and vocabulary here, explicit monitoring, making sure that you're active and up on your feet and making sure that everybody's participating, that there's structured student-to-student interaction. In other words, if they're doing a pair share, they know that means both people in the pair share, instead of one sitting silently and the other one doing all the talking.
So they're taught how to do it.
Yes, we recommend that they explicitly model this, teach it, and then do a gradual release so that the kids can see and know exactly what's expected. Everything they're going to talk about during their structured academic language practice is going to be linked to the standard, the content, and language objectives. So it's in support of that mastery of that standard. And then there's accountability for participation. Often the teacher will let the students know ahead of time, I'm going to be pulling 3 equity cards or 3 equity sticks. I'm going to be asking you, if you're typically the more verbal in the pair, I'm going to be asking you what you heard your partner say to make sure you give them a chance to talk. Or if you pull the name in, guess what? It's one of the ones that usually sits silent. We're going to ask, what did you say? What did you share with your partner? So that everybody knows that there's an accountability tied to it. It can be done before instruction begins. It can be done during and at the end of instruction. So the structured academic language practice gives kids an opportunity to really engage with that academic language, which most of our English learners, that's what they're missing with regards to being able to move to higher levels of academic achievement as well as language proficiency.
Is that done typically in pair share, or do you do it in a variety of ways?
They can do pairs, they can do groups of 3, groups of 4. It's up to the teacher to decide how he or she wants to structure it. But all we're saying is, don't ever give up instructional time unless you think they're going to get more out of it than having you continue to teach. And my argument for them is I've seen some pair share times where all it is you need to get out the next piece of the next materials to continue the lesson, and it's not really academically rigorous or applicable to what's going on. So what we do is then we talk about how the graphic organizer, whichever you would use, would have academic language already embedded in it. So the kids have a way to see how that language is linked. For the academic language that's most critical for the mastery of the standard, you're going to have total support with the term, a definition, and some sort of visual to help the students understand. It combines the linguistic and non-linguistic representation that Marzano talks about. Of course, graphic organizers are the non-linguistic that Marzano links to as well. And then these sentence frames are going to be maybe 3 or 4, maybe more if you'd like. But by completing these sentence frames, the kids will have to use academic language. They'll have to use the parts off of the graphic organizer to complete it. It's not like a cloze activity where there's only one right word for each of those sentences or those blanks, and once they're done, they're done. These are more general, where the students can create multiple correct sentences about the content and language objective based on the standard, using the parts of the graphic organizer and the academic language, and can create multiple sentences. And it's not about them just doing those 3 or 4 and then being quiet or stop writing, but this is to get them to start talking and to start writing. And so the only thing that is missing from what we've already shared about is this real focus on rigor. Because you can connect everything you're doing in your lessons and making sure that everything is supporting the other. But if you don't keep your eye on the rigor, for right now, looking at the CST release test questions to see to what level the students are being asked to demonstrate their mastery of that standard, or on the new sample release questions that they have from the Smarter Balanced assessments to look at how the new standards will be assessed. And that's what these lines going, or these arrows going up are. This is our current level of rigor under the CST, and as we move forward in Common Core, we know that the rigor is going to be even higher. And so this system here is very, very strong. All of our trainings, it's a 4-day training. The principal attends every one of those days because we are really working on having the principal become the instructional leader at the site. You know, there's been a shift in the field with regards to administration. It used to be that site administrators were more managers than they were anything else, and they left the instructional piece to teachers. However, with the under No Child Left Behind and this increasing focus on assessment and accountability for academic achievement, they've been drawn more into the conversation about how to support student achievement, to the point where when you look at the job descriptions of many outside administrators throughout the California and throughout the nation, it asks them to be instructional leaders now, whereas 10 or 15 years ago that was not the case. And so we know that we have some veteran administrators who this is a new role for them. So with this training, it's in part about working with the teachers and having the principals there so they can hear the conversations and really know the training well. But we also do a total of 4 walkthroughs with them, and it's a focus on principal coaching. I tell them it's not so much about the teachers, because that's going to be really up to you and your site administrative team to support. But I want you to be able to look at what they're doing with the same eye that I look at with regards to the same lens, and be able to help them and understand how best to support their teachers in going to high levels of implementation. In our next video, what I'd like to do is link it to implementation theory with Dean Fixon's work on the issue that we have in education. Because as we talked about earlier, there's been a lot of professional development that's gone on, but not a lot of it sticks. We don't have a lot of Velcro with regards to these things. What we looked at in our differentiated instruction work was making sure that we encourage teachers and administrators alike to grow some Velcro so this would stick. How do you do that and put it in a context of a very positive climate for professional development and really reaching the needs of all of your students in your classroom? This time when assessment accountability is at its highest level ever, and we're moving towards a new set of standards.
Well, the Velcro is the key, so we'll talk about that in the next video.